Imagine a moment when time freezes, when the line between impossible and miraculous blurs. 6-year-old Lily Thompson stood trembling in the scorching Arizona sun, her tiny frame casting a long shadow across the dusty ground of Safari Adventure Park. Before her, a scene from nightmares unfolded, her beloved three-legged German shepherd, Max, writhing in the powerful coils of a massive Burmese python. The snake's scales gleamed like wet stones as it tightened its death grip around Max's chest. Max! Lily's scream tore through the air, her small hands clutching her father's electric prod that weighed almost as much as her arm. Blood pounded in her ears as she took one desperate step forward. That's when she heard a low, rumbling growl that vibrated through the earth beneath her feet. Turning slowly, Lily's blue eyes widened in terror as she saw them emerging from the tall grass, a pride of lions, golden in the afternoon light, their eyes fixed on the struggle before them. In that frozen heartbeat, Lily made a choice that would change everything. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Safari Adventure Park stretched across 200 acres of Arizona landscape, a place where animals roamed in habitats designed to mimic their natural environments. At the edge of this sprawling sanctuary sat a modest ranch house with a weathered barn converted into an animal rescue shelter. This was home to the Thompsons' young Lily, her father James, and her grandmother Martha. Lily Thompson was no ordinary 6-year-old. Small for her age, with blonde hair that caught the sunlight like spun gold and eyes blue as desert cornflowers, she possessed an uncanny connection with animals that even her grandmother couldn't explain. "That child," Martha would often say, "was born with the good Lord's gift of animal speaking." Since losing her mother as an infant, Lily had found comfort in the company of creatures, her quiet voice coming alive when she sat reading storybooks to the rescue animals. Max had arrived at Martha's rescue 3 years ago, a broken shadow of his former glory. The German shepherd had served as an elite search and rescue dog until a burning building collapsed, trapping him as he pulled a child to safety. The accident claimed his right front leg and left him with deep scars, both physical and emotional. The once proud working dog had become aggressive and fearful, deemed unadoptable by the service that had once celebrated his heroism. "He's just hurting inside," 7-year-old Lily had whispered when she first saw him, ignoring Martha's warnings to stay back. While the adults argued about Max's fate, Lily had slipped into his kennel and sat quietly beside him, her small hand resting near his paw. By morning, they'd found her curled against his side, both sleeping peacefully. From that day forward, they were inseparable, the three-legged shepherd and the fatherless girl, healing each other with a devotion that needed no words. James Thompson worked as Safari Adventure's Chief Wildlife Conservation Officer, a position that demanded long hours and unwavering dedication. A tall man with weathered features and kind eyes, he relied heavily on his mother-in-law, Martha, to help raise Lily. At 72, Martha Thompson remained spry and sharp-minded, her lifetime as a veterinarian making her small rescue operation a respected institution in the community. With her silver hair always pulled into a practical bun and hands perpetually smelling of healing salves, Martha dispensed wisdom as readily as she did animal care. The morning had dawned clear and bright, the kind of Arizona day where heat rose in visible waves from the parched earth. Lily sat cross-legged on the porch of Martha's animal rescue, reading aloud from The Jungle Book while Max lay beside her, his 3 legs tucked neatly beneath him, his brown eyes never leaving her face. As she reached the part about Mowgli's bravery, Martha appeared in the doorway, phone in hand, her expression tight with concern. "James is coming to pick you up, sweetie," Martha announced, her weathered hands smoothing down her apron. "There's been some kind of emergency at the safari, and he can't find anyone to watch you today." Lily closed her book, a flutter of excitement rising in her chest. She rarely got to visit her father at work. "Can Max come too?" she asked, instinctively placing her small hand on the shepherd's broad head. Martha frowned, lines deepening around her mouth. "I don't think that's wise, child. Safari's no place for a 3-legged dog, especially not on a busy day." "But Grandma," Lily protested, her blue eyes widening. "Max gets scared when I'm gone too long. He thinks I won't come back." This wasn't childish imagination. Max had developed severe separation anxiety after losing his leg, a fact documented by every chewed doorframe and shredded pillow in their home. Martha sighed, recognizing the truth in her granddaughter's words. "Well, land sakes, I suppose he can go, but you both stay put wherever your daddy tells you to. Safari adventure ain't no playground, especially not during an emergency." When James Thompson's truck pulled up in a cloud of dust, his face showed the strain of a morning gone sideways. "Thanks, Mom," he said, helping Lily and Max into the passenger seat. "One of the new handlers left a gate unlocked during feeding time. We've got animals out of their enclosures, and I need all hands on deck." As they drove toward Safari Adventure, Lily pressed her face against the window, watching the landscape change from rocky desert to the curated wilderness of the park. Max sat nervously on her lap, his weight heavy but comforting. "It'll be okay, Max," she whispered into his alert ear. "We'll stay together." James parked near the administrative building, a low-slung structure of adobe and glass. "Lily," he said firmly, kneeling to meet her eyes, "I need you to stay in my office until I come back. Do not leave for any reason. Do you understand?" When she nodded, he added, "And keep Max on his leash. There's too much going on today for him to be wandering around." "Yes, Daddy," Lily promised, clutching Max's leash tightly as they followed James through the staff entrance. The office was small but cool, with a desk covered in papers and walls lined with wildlife conservation posters. A window overlooked a portion of the park where staff hurried back and forth, their voices raised in urgent commands. "Be good, sweetheart," James said, kissing the top of her head before hurrying out, walkie-talkie already crackling with reports from around the park. For a while, Lily sat quietly at her father's desk, drawing pictures with the colored pencil she'd found in a drawer. Max lay at her feet, seemingly content, though his ears twitched at every unusual sound. The walkie-talkie left on the desk occasionally burst to life with fragments of conversation. Python still unaccounted for. Section 5 secure, moving to Section 6. Tranquilizers ready if needed. Lily's crayon stilled mid-stroke. Python. She remembered the massive snake enclosure from her last visit, how the giant reptiles had frightened and fascinated her in equal measure. The largest, a Burmese python named Monty, had been nearly as long as her father was tall. A new voice crackled through the walkie-talkie, her grandmother's voice. "James, Martha here. I'm at the reptile house with Dr. Wilson. We've located shed skin, but no snake. I'm heading toward the west perimeter to check the drainage ditches. These creatures love water when they're stressed. Lily felt a chill despite the warm office. Grandma Martha was here at Safari Adventure. She must have followed them. Probably worried about the emergency. Martha had worked with Safari Adventure for years before retiring, and everyone still called her when animals needed special handling. Max suddenly lifted his head, a low growl building in his chest. His ears pricked forward, and his body tensed beneath Lily's hand. "What is it, boy?" she whispered, feeling her own body respond to his alertness. The distinctive three-note whistle that followed was unmistakable Martha's special call, the one she used when feeding the rescue animals. Lily had grown up hearing it, its cheery tune a signal that good things were coming, but now it sounded distant and somehow wrong, not the confident summons Lily knew, but wavering and weak. Max whined, pulling toward the door, his nails clicking on the tile floor. "We need to stay here, Max," Lily reminded him, but her voice lacked conviction. She went to the window, standing on tiptoes to see outside. Staff members were still rushing about, their focus directed away from the administrative buildings toward the main part of the park. The whistle came again, fainter this time, followed by a sound that made Lily's blood run cold, a cry of pain, distinctly her grandmother's voice. Max barked sharply, lunging against his leash with such force that Lily stumbled forward, nearly losing her grip. "Grandma needs help," Lily whispered, her 6-year-old mind processing this fact with absolute certainty. She glanced at the door her father had disappeared through, remembering her promise to stay put. But Grandma Martha's whistle came again, even weaker than before. In that moment, Lily made a decision that would change everything. "Come on, Max," she said, her small fingers fumbling with the office doorknob. "We have to find Grandma." The hallway outside was empty, everyone apparently deployed to manage the emergency. Lily followed Max, who moved with surprising speed despite his missing leg, his nose working the air, tracking Martha's familiar scent. They slipped out a side door, emerging into the harsh sunlight of midday. Safari Adventure looked different somehow, emptier, wilder. The usual sounds of visitors and guided tours were absent, replaced by distant shouts and the occasional roar or screech of disturbed animals. Max pulled Lily past the empty visitor center, toward a service road that wound behind the exhibits. As they rounded a bend in the path, Lily's steps faltered. There, collapsed beside an overturned medical cart, lay her grandmother. Martha's silver hair had come loose from its usual bun, and her face was pale beneath her tan. "Grandma!" Lily cried, dropping Max's leash and running forward. Martha's eyes widened in alarm. "Lily, stop right there. Child, don't come any closer." But it was too late. Lily had already reached her grandmother's side, her small hands touching Martha's arm. "You're hurt," she said, noticing how Martha clutched her ankle, her gardening pants torn to reveal scraped and bleeding skin. "Listen to me, Lily," Martha whispered urgently, her voice tight with pain. "The Burma python, it's close by. I was tracking it when I fell. You need to go back to your daddy's office right now." Max, who had followed Lily closely, suddenly froze. His body went rigid, hackles rising along his spine, a low, warning growl rumbled from deep in his chest. Time seemed to stretch and slow as Lily turned to follow Max's gaze. At first, she couldn't understand what had captured his attention. The scrubby landscape behind the service road appeared empty, save for a few desert plants in the shadow of a maintenance shed. Then she saw it, a subtle movement, a ripple in the tall grass that didn't match the gentle breeze. "Oh, Lord, have mercy," Martha breathed, her weathered hand gripping Lily's arm with surprising strength. "Lily, don't move a muscle." The grass parted, revealing what Martha had feared, the massive Burmese python, its diamond-patterned skin gleaming in the midday sun. But the snake wasn't slithering toward them. Instead, it was wrapped around something else, something golden brown that thrashed weakly in its powerful coils. "Sandy," Martha gasped, recognizing the golden retriever instantly. Sandy was one of Martha's newest rescues, a former therapy dog who had been abandoned when her elderly owner passed away. Just that morning, Martha had brought her to Safari Adventures Veterinary Clinic for vaccinations. The retriever must have escaped in the chaos of the emergency. Max's growl deepened, the sound vibrating through his entire body. Lily felt a wave of terror wash over her as she watched the python's muscular body constrict tighter around Sandy. The retriever's struggles were growing weaker, her eyes bulging with panic. "We have to help her," Lily cried, her child's heart unable to process the danger fully, only seeing an animal in desperate need. "Stay back, child," Martha warned, trying to pull herself up despite her injured ankle. "That python's big enough to take down a deer. It'll make quick work of a little girl." But as Sandy let out a pitiful whine, something inside Max seemed to snap. With a snarl that Lily had never heard from her gentle companion, Max lunged forward, breaking free from Lily's slack grip on his leash. "Max, no!" Lily screamed, reaching out futilely as the three-legged shepherd charged toward the python and its victim. Martha struggled to stand, her face contorted with pain. "Lord above, that dog's got more courage than sense, Lily. Run back to the building now. Go get your daddy." But Lily stood frozen, unable to tear her eyes away from the unfolding scene. Max, despite his disability, moved with the precision and focus that had made him a legendary search and rescue dog. He circled the python, barking fiercely, trying to distract it from Sandy. The massive snake, disturbed by this new threat, partially unwound from the retriever, its triangular head swiveling to track Max's movements. Sandy collapsed to the ground, gasping for air but still trapped within some of the python's coils. "That's it, Max," Martha whispered, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and hope. "Draw it away from Sandy." But Max continued his tactical approach, darting in to nip at the python's tail before dancing away from its striking range. Each movement was calculated, using his disability as an advantage, staying low to the ground, pivoting sharply on his three legs in ways a four-legged dog couldn't manage. Lily watched in awe as her beloved pet transformed before her eyes. No longer the traumatized rescue dog, but once again the hero he had been born to be. For a moment, it seemed Max's strategy might work. The python released more of its hold on Sandy, focusing its attention on the more immediate threat. Then disaster struck. In his determination to save Sandy, Max miscalculated. He darted in too close, and the python struck with lightning speed. Its powerful jaws latched onto Max's hind leg, and before Lily could even scream, the snake began to coil its massive body around the shepherd. "Max!" Lily's voice shattered the tense silence, her small body lunging forward instinctively. Martha grabbed her granddaughter's shirt with desperate strength. "No, Lily, you can't help him that way." Max's eyes found Lily's across the distance. And in that moment, something passed between them, a look of such profound trust and love that it cut through Lily's panic like a knife. Even as the python's coils tightened around his chest, Max's gaze never left hers, as if drawing strength from their connection. "We have to do something, Grandma." Lily sobbed, her small frame shaking with helpless terror. "He's dying." Martha's eyes darted around frantically, searching for anything that might help. Her gaze fell on her overturned medical cart. "Lily, listen to me very carefully," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "In that cart is a cattle prod, a special kind of tool your daddy uses for emergencies with large animals. It delivers a small electric shock, just enough to startle without causing real harm." Lily's tears slowed as she processed her grandmother's words. "Like the one Daddy showed me in his truck." "That's right, sweetheart. It looks like a long stick with a black handle. If you can get it to me, I might be able to help Max." Lily moved toward the cart, her small hands shaking as she rummaged through the scattered medical supplies. Bandages, bottles, and syringes littered the ground, but there was no sign of the cattle prod. "I don't see it. Grandma." Panic edged back into her voice as she heard Max's painful yelp. The python was tightening its grip. Martha struggled to move closer to the cart, grimacing as she put weight on her injured ankle. "It has to be there somewhere. Child. Keep looking." Sandy, finally free from the python's grasp, had dragged herself a short distance away, whimpering softly. Max was now fully in the snake's clutches, his powerful body rendered helpless by the python's crushing embrace. His breaths came in short, desperate pants, each one more labored than the last. "Lily," Martha called, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "Look over by that shed. James always keeps equipment there for emergencies." Lily darted toward the small maintenance shed, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The door was padlocked, but a window stood slightly ajar. Standing on her tiptoes, Lily peered inside and saw what she was looking for, an electric prod hanging on the wall, just within reach if she stretched her arm through the window. The metal rod was heavier than she expected, nearly slipping from her grasp as she carefully extracted it through the window. Its weight dragged at her small arms as she hurried back to her grandmother. "Good girl," Martha praised, reaching for the prod. But as she tried to stand, her ankle gave way beneath her, sending her crashing back to the ground with a cry of pain. "Damn this old body," she cursed, tears of frustration welling in her eyes. Lily looked from her grandmother to Max, whose struggles were growing weaker by the second. The python had almost completely immobilized him now, its powerful body wrapped twice around his chest and neck. Max's eyes were beginning to glaze over, his tongue lolling from his mouth as he fought for each breath. In that moment, something shifted inside Lily Thompson. The frightened 6-year-old girl fell away, replaced by a determination that seemed to come from somewhere deep and primal within her. Without a word, she gripped the cattle prod in both hands. "Lily, no," Martha cried, realizing her granddaughter's intention. "It's too dangerous." But Lily was already moving, her small sneakers kicking up dust as she approached the python and Max. The snake's attention was fully focused on its prey, its body continuing to tighten with each of Max's weakening heartbeats. You remember what your daddy taught you? Martha called, her voice trembling. The head. Lily, aim for the head, but don't get too close. Lily circled around until she could see the python's head. Its cold, unblinking eyes registered her presence, but it didn't release its hold on Max. The shepherd's gaze found hers one more time, a silent plea that broke her heart. "I'm coming, Max," she whispered, her knuckles white around the prod's handle. Martha watched in horrified fascination as her 6-year-old granddaughter, who needed help reaching the top shelf of the refrigerator and still had trouble tying her shoes, faced down one of nature's most efficient predators. "Lord above," she prayed softly, "protect that child." With a determination that belied her years, Lily stepped forward, the prod extended in front of her like a lance. The python's head swiveled toward her, sensing a new threat. For a heartbeat, girl and snake regarded each other, innocent blue eyes meeting ancient, predatory ones. "Let go of my dog," Lily demanded, her voice surprisingly steady. When the snake didn't move, something fierce and protective flashed across her young face. "Let go of him now." With a courage born of desperate love, Lily jabbed the prod toward the python's head, her small finger finding and pressing the activation button, just as her father had once shown her, in case of emergencies. The electric current crackled through the air as the prod made contact with the python's scales. The massive snake convulsed, its body momentarily loosening around Max as it reacted to the shock. It wasn't enough to make it release its prey entirely, but it created a momentary distraction, and for Max, that moment was all he needed. With the python momentarily distracted, Max summoned what little strength remained in his battered body. His training as a search and rescue dog had taught him to exploit even the smallest advantage, and despite the lack of oxygen reaching his brain, his instincts remained sharp. He twisted violently within the slightly loosened coils, creating just enough space to pull one leg free. "That's it, Max," Lily encouraged, her voice high and thin with fear but steady with purpose. "You can do it." Martha had managed to drag herself closer, her experienced eyes assessing the situation with professional detachment despite her personal terror. "Keep the prod ready, Lily," she instructed. "But wait for my signal. We need to time this perfectly." The python, recovering from the initial shock, began to tighten its grip once more. Max's eyes bulged with the pressure, a pitiful whine escaping his throat as his ribs compressed under the crushing force. "Now, Lily!" Martha shouted. "The head again!" Lily lunged forward, jabbing the prod toward the python's head with all the strength her small arms could muster. This time, she held the button down longer, her face contorted with determination and fear. The snake's entire body convulsed violently, its muscular coils spasming as the electric current disrupted its nervous system. In that crucial moment, Max summoned a final desperate surge of energy. With a yelp that was part pain and part battle cry, he wrenched his body sideways, exploiting his smaller size and the unique leverage his three-legged stance provided. The python's grip slipped, and Max tumbled free, collapsing onto the dusty ground with a heavy thud. "Max!" Lily dropped the prod and rushed toward her dog, but Martha's voice stopped her. "Stay back. Child, the snake's still dangerous." Indeed, the python, though momentarily disoriented, was already recovering. Its massive body slithered across the ground with surprising speed, readjusting its position as it prepared to strike again, its cold eyes fixed on Max, who lay panting heavily, unable to rise. Sandy, who had been watching from a safe distance, suddenly barked a sharp warning sound that drew the python's attention momentarily away from Max. The golden retriever, though injured herself, had found the courage to create a diversion. Lily seized this opportunity, darting forward to grab the cattle prod once more. This time, she approached from behind the python, remembering her father's lessons about snake behavior. "They can't see well behind them," he had told her during one of their nature walks. "Most predators approach from the front or sides." With the snake focused on Sandy, Lily carefully positioned herself. The prod felt impossibly heavy in her small hands, but adrenaline gave her strength beyond her years. Martha watched in terrified awe as her granddaughter, just a tiny slip of a thing, in her Wilderness Explorer t-shirt and scuffed sneakers, faced down one of nature's most perfect predators. "Steady, Lily," Martha called softly. "Remember what we talked about with the rescue animals? Slow movements. No sudden." Before Martha could finish her advice, the python sensed Lily's presence and whipped around with startling speed. Lily stumbled backward, nearly dropping the prod as the massive snake reared up, its head now level with her chest. Time seemed to freeze. Lily stood face to face with the python, close enough to see the flick of its forked tongue as it tasted the air. Behind it, Max struggled to rise, his 3 legs scrabbling weakly against the dirt as he tried to reach Lily. In that suspended moment, a strange calm settled over Lily Thompson. All her 6 years of life had taught her about animals, the countless hours watching her grandmother treat injured creatures, the stories her father told of wildlife conservation, the quiet afternoons reading animal encyclopedias while other children played with dolls crystallized into a single understanding: this was not a monster, but a creature following its nature. "I'm not afraid of you," Lily whispered, her blue eyes locked with the python's alien gaze. "But I won't let you hurt Max." The python swayed slightly, its primitive brain processing this small human as a potential threat. Lily kept her movements minimal, remembering her grandmother's lessons about predator behavior. Too much movement would trigger an attack response. Complete stillness might make her seem like less of a threat. Max had finally managed to rise on wobbly legs, his protective instincts overriding his pain. He limped toward Lily, positioning himself between her and the python despite his grievous injuries. Blood matted his fur where the python's scales had abraded his skin, and his breathing came in labored gasps. But the fierce light of protection burned in his eyes. "Max! No!" Lily pleaded, seeing how badly injured he was. "Stay back!" But Max would not be deterred. With a growl that seemed to come from the very core of his being, he faced the python once more. The contrast was stark: a 3-legged, battered shepherd against a 15-foot apex predator in its prime. Yet, in that moment, Max appeared majestic, his courage transforming him from a disabled rescue dog into a warrior. The python, recognizing the renewed threat, refocused its attention on Max. As it prepared to strike, Lily saw her opportunity. With her grandmother's encouraging nod, she circled wide, approaching the python from its blind spot. The electric prod extended before her like a knight's lance. She took aim at the base of the snake's head, the spot her father had once identified as containing the reptile's brain stem. "For Max," she whispered, and pressed the button. The connection was perfect. the python's entire body went rigid, then began to thrash wildly. Its massive coils whipped across the ground, narrowly missing Lily as she scrambled backward. Martha called out a warning as the snake's tail lashed dangerously close to Max. But the shepherd, running on pure adrenaline, managed to dodge the flailing coils. For several heart-stopping seconds, the python's convulsions continued. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the thrashing stopped. The massive snake lay still, not dead, but stunned into temporary immobility. "You did it, child," Martha exclaimed, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "Lord have mercy. You actually did it." Lily dropped the prod and ran to Max, falling to her knees beside him. His fur was sticky with blood, his sides heaving with the effort of breathing, but he was alive. As Lily wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his fur, Max's tongue lolled out to weakly lick her cheek. "He's hurt bad. Grandma," Lily called, her voice breaking as she took in the full extent of Max's injuries. Deep abrasions circled his chest where the python's scales had cut into him, and his breathing had a worrying rattle to it. One of his hind legs was bent at an unnatural angle, likely broken during his desperate struggle to free himself. Martha dragged herself closer, her trained eye cataloging Max's injuries with professional detachment despite her personal attachment to the dog. "He needs the vet clinic right away," she confirmed, gently probing Max's ribcage and wincing at what she felt. "I think he might have broken ribs pressing against his lungs." Sandy, the golden retriever whose life Max had saved, had cautiously approached. She nosed gently at Max, whining softly as if in gratitude and concern. The two dogs touched noses briefly, a silent communication passing between them. "We need to get help," Martha said, reaching for her walkie-talkie only to find it had been crushed in her fall. "Lily, you'll have to go back to the main building and—" Her words cut off abruptly as a new sound reached them, a deep rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate the very air around them. It wasn't the warning growl of a domestic dog like Max, but something primal and wild that awakened ancient human fears. Lily felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise before she even registered why. Slowly, she turned her head toward the source of the sound, her arms still wrapped protectively around Max. "Don't move, Lily," Martha breathed, her face draining of color. "Don't make any sudden movements." At the edge of the clearing, where the service road curved around a stand of desert scrub, stood a magnificent male lion. His tawny mane caught the sunlight like burnished gold, his amber eyes surveying the scene with imperial detachment. Behind him, partially obscured by the brush, Lily could make out the forms of several lionesses and what appeared to be two half-grown cubs. "The lion habitat," Martha whispered, understanding dawning on her face. "It must have been breached in the emergency, too." Lily felt Max tense beneath her hands, a low warning rumble building in his chest despite his injuries. Sandy cowered behind them, her tail tucked between her legs. "It's okay, Max," Lily soothed, though her own heart was threatening to pound its way out of her chest. "Stay still." The male lion took a step forward, his massive paws silent on the dusty ground. Then another. His gaze seemed fixed not on Lily or Martha, but on the python, which had begun to stir again, its muscular body starting to undulate as it recovered from the shock. "He's hunting the snake," Martha realized, her voice barely audible. "Lily, we need to make ourselves as small and non-threatening as possible. Lions typically don't see humans as prey unless they're starving or threatened." Lily nodded, trying to make herself tiny while still supporting Max's head in her lap. The shepherd's eyes were fixed on the approaching lion, his body trembling with the effort of maintaining his protective posture despite his injuries. The male lion paused about 20 feet away, his tail swishing contemplatively. Then, to Lily and Martha's astonishment, he sat down on his haunches, regarding them with what almost seemed like curiosity. "Well, I'll be," Martha breathed, "in all my 72 years. The python had fully revived now and was beginning to slither away, sensing the new apex predator in its midst. The lion watched it go with surprising indifference, making no move to attack. Behind the male, the lionesses had emerged fully from the brush. One of them, slightly smaller than the others, with a distinctive notch in her left ear, approached cautiously, her eyes fixed not on Lily or Martha, but on Max. "Grandma," Lily whispered, tightening her hold on Max as the lioness drew nearer. "What do we do?" Martha, for once in her life, seemed at a loss for words, in all her years of veterinary practice and wildlife experience. She had never witnessed anything like what was unfolding before them. The notch-eared lioness stopped a few yards away from Max, her head low, nostrils flaring as she scented the air. Max, summoning what little strength remained, raised his head to meet her gaze. For a long moment, dog and lioness regarded each other in what seemed like silent communication. Then, to everyone's shock, the lioness made a soft, chuffing sound, not a growl or a roar, but the gentle vocalization lions use among their own pride. She took another step forward, then gracefully lay down on the ground, her posture non-threatening. "I don't believe what I'm seeing," Martha whispered, her professional curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. "It's almost as if—" Before she could complete her thought, a new voice shattered the strange tableau. "Lily, Martha!" James Thompson's panicked shout rang out as he rounded the bend in the service road, tranquilizer rifle in hand. Behind him came 3 other Safari Adventure staff members, similarly armed. James froze, taking in the impossible scene, his mother-in-law injured on the ground, his 6-year-old daughter cradling a bloodied Max, a family of lions watching them with eerie calm, and a massive python retreating into the underbrush. "Nobody move," he commanded, raising his rifle with trembling hands. "I'll take the male first." "No, Daddy!" Lily cried out, instinctively raising her hand. "They're not hurting us. They're helping." James Thompson stood frozen, his tranquilizer rifle half raised, unable to comprehend the scene before him. His training and experience screamed at him to take the shot, to protect his daughter and mother-in-law from the deadly predators mere yards away. But Lily's plea gave him pause, and there was something undeniably strange about the lion's behavior. In 15 years of wildlife management, he had never seen apex predators acting with such restraint in the presence of injured, vulnerable prey. "Lily," he called, keeping his voice steady despite the fear gripping his chest, "I need you to very slowly stand up and back away from Max." "I can't leave him." "Daddy," Lily replied, her small hands still buried in the shepherd's fur. He's hurt bad, and he saved us from the python." The notch-eared lioness remained motionless, her amber eyes moving between Max and Lily with what almost appeared to be intelligence. The male lion had settled more comfortably on his haunches, his massive mane catching the afternoon light, giving him an almost regal appearance as he surveyed the humans with detached interest. Martha, who had managed to prop herself up against a nearby rock, waved her hand to catch her son-in-law's attention. "James," she called softly, "something very unusual is happening here. These lions, they're not behaving like predators. They had every opportunity to attack us, but they didn't. They seem more interested in the python." Dr. Eleanor Wilson, Safari Adventures head veterinarian, had crept forward to stand beside James. "She's right," she murmured, her professional curiosity momentarily overriding her caution. "This isn't normal predatory behavior. It's almost as if they're standing guard." Director Robert Callahan, a barrel-chested man with 30 years of wildlife conservation experience, lowered his own tranquilizer gun slightly. "I've never seen anything like it," he admitted. "The female keeps looking at the dog like she recognizes him." James's mind raced, trying to make sense of the impossible tableau before him. His daughter, his tiny, vulnerable 6-year-old, sat unharmed amidst a pride of lions, cradling her injured dog while a massive python slithered away in the background. None of his training had prepared him for this moment. "Daddy," Lily called, her voice stronger now, "I think they remember Max." "Remember him?" James echoed, confusion evident in his voice. "Lily, that's not possible. Max has never—" "The Wilkinson Forest fire," Martha interrupted, realization dawning on her weathered face. 3 years ago, James. That's when Max lost his leg." James's rifle lowered further as long-buried memories surfaced. The Wilkinson Forest fire had been one of the worst natural disasters in the region's history, a raging inferno that had threatened not only human settlements, but also the southern boundary of safari adventure. Max had been part of the search and rescue team, using his extraordinary scenting abilities to locate animals and people trapped by the rapidly advancing flames. "But what does that have to do with these lions?" he asked, still maintaining his protective stance. Martha's eyes gleamed with the excitement of connecting seemingly disparate facts. "Don't you remember? 3 of Safari's lions had been temporarily relocated to a rehabilitation facility at the forest's edge, a mother and 2 cubs who had been injured by poachers. They were scheduled for return the following week." Dr. Wilson gasped softly. "The notched ear female," she whispered. "That's Nala. She was one of those cubs, though she'd be fully grown now. The other must be her brother, Keon." "And the male?" Director Callahan asked. "A wild male who joined our pride 2 years ago," Dr. Wilson explained. "We named him Mufasa. He's the father of Nala's cubs." James's mind flashed back to the chaotic days of the fire, the desperate evacuations, the animals being loaded into transport vehicles, the last-minute decision to send Max's team to check the rehabilitation facility. He remembered the radio call reporting that all staff had evacuated, but 3 lions remained unaccounted for. "Max found them," he said slowly, the memory crystallizing. "The mother was dead, smoke inhalation. I think they said. But Max located the cubs hiding in a drainage culvert and led the handlers to them. He went back in 3 times despite the smoke and heat. That's when the burning tree fell on him, Martha added softly. Crushed his leg beyond saving. But he'd already gotten those cubs out. Lily looked up at her father, her blue eyes wide with wonder. See? Daddy, they remember him. They know Max saved them. The notion seemed impossible. Lions couldn't possibly retain such memories, couldn't make such connections across species and time. Yet the evidence was before them. Nala, the lioness with the notched ear, had crept closer to Max, her posture submissive rather than predatory. She made that soft, chuffing sound again, a vocalization typically reserved for friendly greetings within a pride. Max, despite his grievous injuries, lifted his head slightly at the sound. His tail gave a single, weak wag of recognition. Director Callahan shook his head in amazement. In 30 years of wildlife management, I've never witnessed anything like this. It challenges everything we think we know about animal cognition and interspecies recognition. Dr. Wilson had begun to inch forward, her medical instincts taking over as she assessed Max from a distance. That dog needs immediate medical attention, she stated flatly. Multiple crush injuries, possible pneumothorax from the constriction, and that hind leg is definitely broken. James nodded, but the question remained how to extract his daughter and the injured dog from the midst of the lion pride without triggering predatory instincts. Tranquilizing the lions was an option, but it would take precious minutes for the drugs to take effect, minutes Max might not have. Lily, however, seemed to have no such concerns. With the innocent confidence of a child who believed in the fundamental goodness of animals, she looked directly at Nala and spoke as if addressing a friend. "My dog needs help," she said simply. "He's hurt really bad. We need to take him to the doctor now." To the astonishment of every adult present, Nala responded to Lily's voice by backing up several steps, creating a clear path between the humans and Max. The male lion, Mufasa, remained stationary but watchful, his massive head swiveling to track the movements of James and the other staff members. "I'll be damned," Officer Mike Donovan, Safari Adventures security chief, muttered. "It's like they understand." Dr. Wilson seized the opportunity, approaching Lily and Max with slow, deliberate movements. "I need to examine him quickly," she explained to Lily, kneeling beside the injured shepherd. Her experienced hands moved gently over Max's body, assessing the damage with professional efficiency. "Multiple broken ribs," she reported grimly. "Possible pneumothorax. Fractured tibia on the remaining hind leg. He needs surgery immediately." James edged closer to his daughter, fighting every instinct that screamed at him to grab her and run. "Lily, sweetheart, we need to let Dr. Wilson take Max now. He's very badly hurt." Tears welled in Lily's eyes as the gravity of Max's condition became clear. "Is he going to die, Daddy?" she asked, her voice small and frightened. Before James could answer, Martha spoke up from her position against the rock. "Now you listen here. Lily Thompson," she said firmly, her usual no-nonsense tone returning despite her own injuries. "That dog has more grit and determination than most humans I've known in my 72 years. He didn't survive a burning building and learn to live with 3 legs just to give up now." Lily nodded, drawing strength from her grandmother's certainty. She leaned down to whisper in Max's ear, "You have to be brave a little longer. Max, Dr. Wilson is going to make you better." As if understanding, Max gave a soft whine and licked Lily's cheek one more time before allowing Dr. Wilson to carefully slide a folded emergency blanket beneath him. With Officer Donovan's assistance, they created a makeshift stretcher to transport the injured dog. "What about Grandma?" Lily asked, suddenly remembering Martha's injured ankle. "I'm right behind you, child," Martha assured her, accepting Director Callahan's help to stand. "Just a sprained ankle. Nothing that won't heal with a little time and a lot of complaining." As Dr. Wilson and Officer Donovan prepared to lift Max, the lions stirred. The adults tensed, hands moving instinctively toward their tranquilizer rifles. But Lily remained calm, with an assurance that belied her years. She turned to face the pride. "Thank you for helping us," she said solemnly, addressing Nala directly. "Max is my best friend, just like he helped you when you were little." The notch-eared lioness made that peculiar chuffing sound once more, then slowly backed away, rejoining her mate and cubs. The entire pride retreated several yards, maintaining their watchful gaze but clearly allowing the humans to depart with Max and Martha. As they carefully made their way back toward the main facility, James kept himself between the lions and his daughter, his tranquilizer rifle ready, despite the animal's apparent benevolence. "Lily," he said quietly, "what you did today was incredibly brave, but also incredibly dangerous. You could have been killed." Lily looked up at her father, her small face somber. "I had to help Max and Grandma," she said simply. "Max would do it for me. He did do it for me." James couldn't argue with that truth. The shepherd had proven his devotion many times over, most dramatically today. Still, as a father, the thought of how close he had come to losing his daughter made his blood run cold. "The python," Dr. Wilson said suddenly. "We still need to recapture it." Director Callahan glanced back at the pride of lions, who had settled into the shade of a large boulder, still watching the departing humans with enigmatic feline interest. "I have a feeling our escaped python won't be a problem much longer," he observed dryly. "Lions consider snakes a delicacy." As they reached the main service road where a veterinary transport vehicle waited, Lily refused to leave Max's side. "I'm going with him," she insisted, her small chin jutting out stubbornly in a gesture so reminiscent of her late mother that it made James's heart ache. Dr. Wilson nodded, understanding the bond between child and dog. "She can ride with us to the clinic," she assured James. "I might need her there anyway. He seems calmer when she's close." As the vehicle pulled away, Lily held Max's paw in her small hand, whispering encouragement as Dr. Wilson inserted an IV catheter and administered emergency pain medication. The shepherd's breathing remained labored, each intake of air clearly causing him pain, but his brown eyes never left Lily's face. "You're going to be okay," Lily promised, with the absolute certainty that only children can muster. "You saved Sandy, and you saved me and Grandma. Now it's our turn to save you." From the back window of the transport, Lily could see her father and Director Callahan standing at the edge of the service road, still watching the pride of lions in the distance. The last thing she saw before the vehicle rounded a bend was the male lion rising to his feet, his magnificent mane catching the late afternoon sun as he led his family back toward the depths of safari adventure. The Safari Adventure Veterinary Clinic was a state-of-the-art facility designed to handle everything from routine checkups for small mammals to emergency surgeries on the park's largest residents. Today, its staff moved with urgent efficiency as Dr. Wilson wheeled Max through the sliding glass doors, Lily trotting alongside the gurney, her small hand never leaving the shepherd's fur. "Operating Room 2, Dr. Wilson called out, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone accustomed to medical crises. "Page Dr. Ramirez for anesthesia. I want a full blood panel, portable chest X-ray, and get that ultrasound ready." Lily watched in wide-eyed silence as a team of veterinary technicians swarmed around Max. One inserted a second IV line, while another attached monitoring equipment that beeped and flashed with readings Lily couldn't understand. A third carefully cut away sections of Max's blood-matted fur to reveal the full extent of his injuries. "Lily," Dr. Wilson said gently, kneeling to meet the child's eyes. "We need to take Max into surgery now. There's a special waiting room for families just down the hall where you can stay with your dad." Lily shook her head stubbornly, her blonde hair swinging with the movement. "I promised I wouldn't leave him," she insisted, her voice trembling but determined. "Dr." Wilson exchanged a glance with a newly arrived James Thompson, who stood in the doorway with Martha beside him, the elderly woman now seated in a wheelchair with her ankle professionally wrapped. "Sweetheart," James began, crossing the room to place his hands on Lily's shoulders, "Max needs special medicine and surgery that might be scary to watch. Dr. Wilson needs space to work so she can make him better. He'll be scared without me," Lily protested, tears welling in her blue eyes. "He doesn't like doctors or hospitals. Not since the fire." Martha wheeled herself forward, her weathered face gentle but firm. "Lily, do you remember when we talked about being brave for those we love? Sometimes being brave means stepping back and letting others help." Dr. Wilson, recognizing the special bond between girl and dog, offered a compromise. "Lily, you can stay with Max until he falls asleep from the anesthesia. Then you need to go with your dad and Grandma to the waiting room. I promise we'll come update you regularly." Lily considered this proposal, her young face solemn with the weight of decision. Finally, she nodded. "Can I talk to him first, so he knows I'll be waiting?" "Of course," Dr. Wilson agreed, nodding to her team to give the child a moment. Lily leaned close to Max's ear, her small hand gently stroking the uninjured side of his face. "Max," she whispered, her voice catching slightly. "Dr. Wilson is going to make you all better, but you have to go to sleep for a while. I'll be waiting right outside. I promise." "You saved me and Grandma and Sandy today, just like you saved those lion cubs in the fire. You're the bravest, best dog in the whole world, and I love you more than anything." Max, despite his pain and the sedatives already coursing through his system, managed to turn his head slightly, his tongue weakly lapping at Lily's hand in acknowledgement, his brown eyes, though clouded with pain, fixed on hers with unwavering trust. Dr. Ramirez, the anesthesiologist, approached with a syringe. "We're ready to put him under now," he said quietly. Lily nodded, placing a final kiss on Max's forehead before allowing her father to lead her away. At the door to the operating room, she turned back for one last look. "Fight hard, Max," she called, her small voice suddenly strong with conviction. "Remember, you're my hero." The hours that followed were the longest of Lily's young life. The cheerful yellow walls of the family waiting room, decorated with wildlife murals intended to comfort and distract, seemed to close in around her as she alternated between pacing the small space and curling up against her grandmother's side. James brought her favorite apple juice and animal crackers from the cafeteria, but the snacks remained untouched on the side table. Martha, despite her own discomfort, kept up a steady stream of stories about other animals she had treated over her long career as a veterinarian, miraculous recoveries, against all odds survivals, and the extraordinary resilience of the animal spirit. Behind her matter-of-fact delivery, James recognized his mother-in-law's intent to prepare Lily for all possibilities while nurturing hope. "Your Max," Martha concluded, stroking Lily's hair as the child leaned against her shoulder, "has already beaten the odds once before. That dog's got more lives than a cat and more heart than most humans." 3 hours into the surgery, Dr. Wilson appeared in the waiting room doorway, her surgical cap still on and dark circles of fatigue beneath her eyes. James and Lily both stood immediately, while Martha leaned forward in her wheelchair, her knuckles white where she gripped the armrests. "He's still in surgery," Dr. Wilson said, her voice carefully neutral. "There's extensive damage to his rib cage, and we're dealing with a pneumothorax air in his chest cavity from a punctured lung. The pressure was making it difficult for him to breathe." "But he's alive?" Lily asked, the question simple but encompassing her entire world. Dr. Wilson's professional demeanor softened as she met the child's anxious gaze. "Yes, Lily, he's alive. He's fighting very hard. We've inserted a chest tube to help him breathe, set the broken leg, and we're working on repairing his lung now. Dr. Ramirez is keeping him deeply sedated so he doesn't feel any pain." "When can I see him?" Lily asked. "It's going to be several more hours," Dr. Wilson explained gently. "And when you do see him, he'll have lots of tubes and bandages. He'll probably need to stay here for at least a week, maybe longer." Lily nodded solemnly, processing this information with the same quiet determination she had shown throughout the ordeal. "But he's going to live, right, Doctor?" Wilson hesitated, professional ethics warring with her desire to comfort the child. "Max has suffered very serious injuries," she said carefully. "The next 24 hours will be critical, but he's receiving the best possible care, and he seems to have an extraordinary will to live." As Dr. Wilson returned to the operating room, Lily climbed onto Martha's lap, something she hadn't done since she was 4 years old. The elderly woman wrapped her arms around her granddaughter, rocking her gently. "Grandma," Lily whispered, her face pressed against Martha's shoulder. "Is Max going to die?" Martha, who had never believed in lying to children about difficult truths, chose her words carefully. "I don't know, sweet pea. He's hurt mighty bad. But I do know this, that dog loves you something fierce. And love like that is a powerful medicine." As twilight descended over Safari Adventure, turning the Arizona sky into a canvas of pinks and purples, Director Callahan appeared at the waiting room door. His usually immaculate uniform was dusty and disheveled, evidence of the day's ongoing crisis management. "I thought you all might want an update," he said, accepting the cup of coffee James offered from the waiting room's small refreshment station. "We've secured most of the escaped animals. The python has been dealt with." His eyes flicked briefly to Lily before he amended. The lions have returned to their habitat voluntarily, which is unprecedented in my experience. But they were protecting Max, Lily stated with absolute certainty. Director Callahan nodded thoughtfully. That does appear to be the case. Young lady, our zoologists are fascinated. They're reviewing historical records and security footage from the Wilkinson fire to better understand the connection. Martha snorted softly. Scientists, always needing to measure and document what's plain as day to anyone with eyes to see. Those lions remembered that Max saved them, pure and simple. Well, whatever the explanation, Director Callahan continued, it's remarkable. We've had multiple news outlets calling already. The story of a 3-legged dog and a 6-year-old girl facing down a python, then being protected by lions. It's capturing people's imagination. James groaned softly. The last thing Lily needs right now is media attention. I've deflected them for now, Callahan assured him. But this is the kind of story that reminds people why wildlife conservation matters. It demonstrates the complexity and depth of animal cognition, the unexpected connections between species. When the time is right, it might be worth sharing. Before James could respond, a commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Through the waiting room's glass wall, they could see staff members rushing toward the clinic's rear entrance, their expressions a mixture of alarm and disbelief. Dr. Wilson appeared moments later, still in her surgical scrubs, her face etched with a strange combination of professional concern and wonder. You all need to see this, she said simply, gesturing for them to follow. James helped Martha into her wheelchair, and they followed Dr. Wilson down the hallway to a rear observation area that overlooked the clinic's fenced recovery yard. The space was typically used for larger animals in the later stages of rehabilitation, allowing them access to fresh air while remaining under observation. We noticed it about 20 minutes ago, Dr. Wilson explained as they reached the large windows. Security called it in. Lily pressed her face against the glass, her eyes widening at the sight before her. There, just beyond the recovery yard's fence, lay the lion pride Mufasa, Nala, the other lionesses, and the cubs arranged in a loose semicircle facing the building. They weren't pacing or prowling as captive lions typically did. They simply lay there, as if mounting a quiet vigil. "Good Lord above," Martha breathed, her usual composure momentarily shaken. "Would you look at that? They followed him here." Director Callahan shook his head in amazement. They must have tracked his scent. "We've checked the habitat fencing. They didn't break out. They found a maintenance gate that was open during today's emergency and left unlocked." "Are they dangerous?" James asked, instinctively placing a protective hand on Lily's shoulder. "They haven't shown any aggression," Dr. Wilson assured him. "They're just waiting. We've had staff monitoring them since they arrived. They're calm, not even hunting the small game that's wandered past." Lily watched the lions with a sense of wonder rather than fear. "They're worried about Max," she said simply, her childish certainty unshakable. "They want to know if he's okay." Dawn broke over Safari Adventure with a painter's flourish of orange and gold, the early morning light casting long shadows across the veterinary clinic's recovery yard. The lion pride remained, having maintained their vigil through the night. Park staff had cordoned off the area, establishing a respectful distance while monitoring the unprecedented situation. Videos taken by astonished security personnel had already begun circulating among the staff, shared with whispered conversations about animal intelligence and cross-species bonds. Inside the clinic's intensive care unit, Max lay on a padded bed, surrounded by a constellation of medical equipment. Tubes emerged from his chest and foreleg, delivering medications and draining accumulated fluids. His broken hind leg was immobilized in a cast, and bandages wrapped his torso where Dr. Wilson had surgically repaired his damaged ribs and punctured lung. The steady beep of cardiac monitors provided a rhythmic counterpoint to his shallow breathing. The surgery had lasted nearly 6 hours, a marathon effort that had tested the limits of the veterinary team's skills. Twice during the procedure, Max's heart had faltered, requiring emergency interventions that left Dr. Wilson and her team drenched in stress-induced perspiration. Yet against considerable odds, the shepherd had survived the night. Lily had finally succumbed to exhaustion around midnight, curling up on a reclining chair in the waiting room with her head pillowed on her father's lap. James had kept watch through the small hours, his mind replaying the day's events in an endless loop, searching for the moment when he might have prevented his daughter's deadly encounter with the python. Martha, who knew her son-in-law's tendency toward self-recrimination, had stayed awake with him as long as her aging body allowed, dispensing the particular brand of tough wisdom that had sustained her through life's hardest moments. "You can't wrap that child in cotton wool, James," she had told him, her voice low to avoid waking Lily. "Her mother wouldn't have wanted that." The mention of Sarah Thompson, gone 4 years now from a swift and merciless cancer, had brought the expected flinch. James still struggled to hear his wife's name without pain. "Sarah would have had a heart attack seeing Lily between a python and a pride of lions," he'd countered. Martha's weathered hand had patted his arm. "Maybe so, but she'd have been mighty proud, too. That girl's got her mother's spine of steel. Make no mistake." Now, as sunrise painted the clinic in warm light, Dr. Wilson entered the waiting room, her face showing the strain of a sleepless night, but her eyes bright with cautious optimism. "He's stable," she announced without preamble, knowing this was the only news that mattered to the small family. "The chest tube is working well, his lung is reinflating, and his vital signs have improved since midnight. We're not out of the woods yet, but he's doing better than I expected, given the severity of his injuries." Lily stirred at the sound of voices, blinking away sleep as she processed the doctor's words. "Can I see him now?" she asked, the same question she had repeated like a mantra throughout the night. "Dr." Wilson hesitated, mentally reviewing hospital protocols that typically limited ICU visitation. But this case had already shattered so many norms that one more exception hardly seemed consequential. "Yes," she decided, "but just for a few minutes. And you need to be very quiet and still. He needs absolute rest to heal." James helped Martha into her wheelchair while Dr. Wilson led Lily toward the ICU. At the door, she knelt to meet the child at eye level. "Remember what I told you about all the tubes and machines they're helping Max breathe and keeping track of his heart? They might look scary, but they're making him better." Lily nodded solemnly. "Like when Mommy was in the hospital," she said, the simple observation revealing her deeper understanding of serious illness than any 6-year-old should possess. "Doctor." Wilson squeezed her shoulder gently, then pushed open the door. The ICU was dimly lit and eerily quiet except for the soft hum of equipment. Max occupied the largest enclosure, designed for larger wildlife but now serving as a canine intensive care unit. A veterinary technician sat nearby, monitoring readings and adjusting medication levels. Lily approached slowly, her eyes wide as she took in the tubes emerging from Max's body, the bandages covering much of his fur, and the specialized padding supporting his 3.5 limbs in proper alignment. The shepherd appeared diminished somehow, his usually alert presence reduced to this damaged, dependent form. "Hi, Max," she whispered, reaching through the enclosure bars to gently touch his paw, one of the few places not covered in bandages or pierced by medical equipment. "It's me. Lily. I'm here just like I promised." Max's eyes remained closed, his consciousness suppressed by sedatives to prevent movement that might compromise his healing. Yet as Lily's small fingers touched his paw, something remarkable happened. His heart rate, displayed on the monitor above the bed, slowed slightly from its elevated rhythm, settling into a more stable pattern. The technician noticed immediately, raising her eyebrows at Dr. Wilson. "That's the calmest his vitals have been all night," she murmured. "Blood pressure's dropping toward normal range, too." Dr. Wilson watched thoughtfully as Lily continued her one-sided conversation with Max, telling him about the lions waiting outside and promising to read him his favorite stories when he woke up. The child's presence seemed to be having a measurable physiological effect on the dog, something Dr. Wilson had observed anecdotally throughout her career, but rarely seen documented with such clarity. "You know," she said to James, who stood watching his daughter with a mixture of pride and lingering fear, "there's actually quite a bit of research on the physiological benefits of emotional bonds in recovery. We might want to consider allowing Lily more regular visits. It seems to be having a positive effect." James nodded, recognizing both the medical wisdom and the emotional necessity. Separating Lily from Max now might cause more harm than good to both of them. "Whatever helps him heal," he agreed quietly. Martha, who had insisted on being wheeled into the ICU despite her own discomfort, watched her granddaughter with knowing eyes. "When I was in practice," she remarked, "I saw animals pull through impossible situations because someone they loved was waiting for them. Science can measure a lot of things these days, but it still can't fully explain the power of that kind of bond." Their quiet conversation was interrupted by Director Callahan, who appeared at the ICU door, his expression indicating news of significance. He beckoned James into the hallway, speaking in low tones once they were out of Lily's earshot. "We've been reviewing the security footage from 3 years ago, during the Wilkinson fire," he explained. "And Martha was right. Max didn't just find those lion cubs, he went back into a burning building 3 separate times to lead handlers to them. The third time, when the roof collapsed on him, he was actually shielding the younger cub, the one with the notched ear, Nala, with his body." James ran a hand through his hair, struggling to process this information. "So the lions really do remember him. They recognize Max as the dog that saved them years ago." Director Callahan nodded. "Our zoologists are astonished. Animal cognition experts from universities are already calling, requesting permission to document this long-term recognition across species, especially in big cats, challenges current understanding of animal memory and social cognition." "What about the lions now?" James asked, glancing toward the window where the pride could still be seen, maintaining their peculiar vigil. "They can't stay there indefinitely." "That's the other thing I wanted to discuss," Callahan replied. "We're developing a plan to create a temporary barrier that will shield the recovery yard while still allowing the lions visual access. Dr. Abernathy, our head zoologist, believes forcing them back to their habitat might cause distress that could lead to aggression. She recommends allowing this unusual behavior to run its natural course." The conversation was interrupted by a sudden commotion from the ICU. James rushed back in to find Max awake far earlier than expected given his sedation level. The shepherd's eyes were open, and despite his grievous injuries, he was attempting to lift his head, his gaze fixed on Lily. "He shouldn't be conscious yet, Doctor," Wilson said, quickly checking the IV lines and medication pumps. "The sedative levels should keep him under for at least another 4 hours." Martha smiled knowingly. "Some things are stronger than sedatives," she observed, watching as Lily spoke soothingly to Max, encouraging him to lie still while assuring him she wasn't leaving. To everyone's amazement, Max responded to Lily's gentle commands, settling back onto his padded bed, though his eyes remained open, fixed on her with unmistakable recognition and relief. The vital signs monitor showed elevated readings, evidence of pain breaking through the medication, but none of the dangerous spikes that might indicate distress. "I've never seen anything like it," Dr. Wilson admitted, adjusting the pain medication without increasing the sedation. "He's obviously in pain, but he's choosing to remain conscious." "He was looking for Lily," Martha stated with absolute certainty. "Needed to make sure she was safe before he could rest easy." Dr. Wilson made a quick decision based on both medical readings and the extraordinary circumstances. "Lily, would you like to stay with Max for a while? I think your presence is helping him." The child nodded eagerly. "And Doctor?" Wilson instructed the technician to bring a comfortable chair that could be placed directly beside Max's enclosure. Once Lily was settled, she reached through the bars again, gently stroking the top of Max's head, one of the few areas not covered in bandages. "I'm right here, Max," she assured him. "You just focus on getting better." To the astonishment of the medical staff, Max's vitals began to stabilize, pain indicators decreasing despite no change in medication. His eyes remained open but grew heavier as natural exhaustion competed with his determination to keep Lily in sight. "Well, I'll be," Martha murmured, her weathered face soft with wonder. "In all my years of veterinary practice, I've seen some remarkable things, but this—" She shook her head, watching as Max finally surrendered to healing sleep, his paw still pressed against Lily's small hand through the enclosure bars. Through the window of the ICU, the first rays of morning sun illuminated the recovery yard where the lion pride maintained their silent vigil. Nala, the lioness with the notched ear, had moved closest to the fence, her amber eyes fixed on the building as if she could somehow see through walls to the wounded shepherd inside. It was a tableau that defied conventional understanding, a three-legged dog fighting for life after saving a child from a python, a pride of lions standing guard outside the hospital, and a 6-year-old girl at the center of it all, connecting these disparate creatures with bonds stronger than anyone could have imagined. The 2 weeks that followed unfolded like a strange dream at safari adventure, with reality suspended in favor of something more remarkable. The story of Lily, Max, and the lion pride spread quickly despite Director Callahan's attempts to manage media interest. By the end of the first week, news vans had assembled at the park's main entrance, reporters eager for glimpses of what was being called the Lion's Vigil, or, more sensationally, the Pride's Promise. Max's recovery progressed with what Dr. Wilson described as miraculous determination. The chest tube was removed after 5 days, his lung having reinflated and begun the healing process with unexpected speed. The surgical incisions showed minimal infection risk, and even his broken leg was knitting well, though it would require months of rehabilitation before he could bear weight on it again. Throughout it all, Lily remained a constant presence. Safari Adventure had converted a small office adjacent to the recovery ward into a temporary bedroom, allowing the child to spend nights near Max while James worked his shifts and Martha supervised from her temporary lodgings in the staff quarters. The arrangement was unconventional, but the therapeutic effect of Lily's presence on Max was undeniable. His cortisol levels drop significantly when she's with him. Dr. Wilson explained to a fascinated team of veterinary students who had come to observe the case. We're seeing accelerated healing rates that can't be explained by our medical interventions alone. The lion pride remained for 10 days, maintaining their vigilance with a dedication that astonished even the most experienced wildlife experts. They departed only when Max was moved from the ICU to the regular recovery ward, a transition that coincided with the first time he was able to stand on his own, a wobbly, brief achievement witnessed by Lily, who had applauded with such genuine joy that nurses in the hallway had found themselves wiping away unexpected tears. The morning after the lions returned to their habitat, Director Callahan appeared at the recovery ward with an unusual proposition for James and Martha. He found them in the small courtyard where Max was permitted short, supervised walks, Lily carefully supporting his right side while Martha monitored his gait with a professional eye. "We've had an idea," Callahan began, watching as Max took shaky steps across the courtyard. "The board has been discussing ways to recognize what happened here. They're proposing a new educational exhibit focused on animal cognition and cross-species bonds, featuring Max and the lions as the centerpiece." James frowned slightly. "Robert, I appreciate the thought, but Max isn't an exhibit. He's a retired search and rescue dog who's been through enough trauma." Of course, Callahan hastened to clarify. "We're not suggesting displaying Max himself. Rather, we'd like to create an educational center that tells his story, both his search and rescue career, and this recent event with the python and lions. We'd include information about animal intelligence, memory, and the documented cases of cross-species protection." Martha adjusted her glasses, considering the proposal. "And what would this mean for Lily and Max in practical terms?" "For one thing," Callahan replied, "the board has approved offering James a new position as our Education and Conservation Outreach Director. It would mean regular hours, no more overnight shifts, and a substantial raise." He turned to James. "You'd be perfect for it, your background in wildlife management combined with your personal connection to this remarkable story." James appeared taken aback by the offer. Since Sarah's death, he had struggled to balance his demanding role as safety director with single parenthood, relying heavily on Martha's help and accepting less-than-ideal shift assignments to make ends meet. "There's more," Callahan continued. "The board has also approved funding for a full scholarship for Lily's education through college, regardless of whether you accept the position. They feel her courage and the attention she's brought to animal conservation deserves recognition." Martha snorted softly. "Well, It's about time those stuffed shirts on the board did something worthwhile with all that donation money. Though I suspect this sudden generosity has something to do with all those news cameras at your front gate." Callahan had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "The publicity hasn't hurt, I'll admit, but this is genuinely about recognizing something extraordinary. What happened here challenges everything we thought we knew about animal cognition and memory. It deserves to be documented and shared." Before James could respond, Lily's excited voice carried across the courtyard. "Daddy, Grandma, look, Max is wagging his tail." Indeed, the shepherd's tail had begun a slow, tentative wag, the first voluntary movement of joy he had displayed since the surgery. James felt his throat tighten with emotion as he watched his daughter kneeling beside her dog, her small face alight with happiness over this simple sign of recovery. "We'll think about it, Robert," he said finally, "but whatever we decide has to be what's best for both of them. They've been through enough." As spring bloomed across Arizona, transforming the desert landscape with unexpected bursts of wildflower color, Max's recovery continued to exceed all expectations. By the 6-week mark, he was walking short distances without assistance, his missing front leg and newly healed hind leg creating a distinctive but determined gait that Lily proudly declared was extra special, just like him. The media interest had gradually waned, though National Geographic and several scientific journals had received special permission to document the ongoing interactions between Max and the lion pride. These had evolved into something remarkable: controlled, supervised visits where Max, now strong enough for outdoor excursions, was brought to a special viewing area adjacent to the lion habitat. During these sessions, Nala would often approach the protective barrier, lying as close as possible to where Max sat with Lily. Sometimes the lioness would make that distinctive chuffing sound, a vocalization typically reserved for friendly greetings within a pride. Max would respond with a soft whine, his ears forward and tail gently wagging, gently. Animal behaviorists observed these interactions with fascination, recording every nuance of this unprecedented cross-species communication. It's rewriting our understanding of animal memory. Dr. Abernathy, Safari Adventures head zoologist, explained during one such session. The prevailing theory was that lions, while intelligent, wouldn't retain recognition of specific individuals from other species over years. Yet the evidence here is undeniable. Martha, who often accompanied Lily and Max to these sessions, had little patience for scientific caution. "Any farmer could have told those researchers that animals remember," she declared to a visiting professor from Cornell University. "My old barn cat recognized the veterinarian who'd treated her 10 years earlier, hissed at him the moment he walked in the door. Animals know who's helped them and who's hurt them, same as people do." On a particularly beautiful afternoon in late April, when the desert air carried the sweet scent of cactus blooms, James gathered Martha and Lily for a family meeting on the porch of their new home, a comfortable ranch house on Safari Adventure property that came with his new position as education director. Max dozed nearby, his body still lean from weight loss during recovery, but his coat regaining its healthy shine. "I've been thinking about Director Callahan's proposal," James began, watching his daughter's face carefully. "The one about creating an exhibit about Max and the lions." Lily looked up from the friendship bracelet she was weaving, her expression curious. "Would people come to learn about Max being a hero?" "They would," James confirmed. "But before we decide, I want to make sure you understand what it might mean. There would be pictures of you and Max, stories about what happened with the python. People might recognize you sometimes, or ask questions about that day. Martha rocked steadily in her porch chair, her keen eyes missing nothing of this exchange between father and daughter. Since the incident, she had watched Lily closely for signs of trauma or nightmares, but the child had displayed a resilience that continually astonished her. Rather than developing fears, Lily had grown more confident, more certain of her place in the world. Would it help other kids understand about animals? Lily asked thoughtfully. About how they're smarter than people think. James nodded. That would be one of the main goals. To help people understand that animals have complex emotions and memories, that they can recognize kindness and return it in their own way. Lily considered this seriously, her small brow furrowed in concentration. Then she turned to Max, who had opened his eyes at the sound of their voices. "What do you think, Max? Would you like to be famous?" The shepherd lifted his head, looking first at Lily and then at James and Martha, as if truly considering the question. Then he gave a single, deliberate woof that made Lily giggle and Martha chuckle appreciatively. "I think that's a yes," Lily declared with the absolute certainty of childhood. "But only if we do it together." And so it was decided. The Max Thompson Education Center opened at Safari Adventure on the one-year anniversary of what locals now simply called the Python Incident. The modern building featured interactive exhibits on animal cognition, a detailed history of Max's search and rescue career, and a special theater where visitors could watch expertly edited footage of the lion's unprecedented vigil outside the veterinary clinic. Most popular of all was the outdoor observation area where, on scheduled days, visitors could witness the continuing bond between Max and the lion pride. These sessions were carefully managed to prioritize the animal's well-being, with Lily, now a confident 7-year-old, often serving as a junior guide, explaining to wide-eyed children how her three-legged dog had once saved lion cubs from a fire and how they had remembered his kindness years later. "Animals are a lot like people," she would tell her attentive audiences, repeating wisdom gleaned from countless conversations with her grandmother. "They remember who was kind to them. They know love when they feel it. And sometimes they surprise us by being braver and smarter than we ever expected." On a golden afternoon in late summer, as shadows lengthened across Safari Adventure's carefully maintained grounds, Martha Thompson sat on a bench outside the Education Center, watching her granddaughter lead a group of visiting school children through Max's story. The shepherd walked proudly at Lily's side, his three-legged gait now so natural that he moved with fluid grace, his missing limb long since ceased to be a limitation. James joined his mother-in-law, handing her a cup of her favorite cinnamon tea. "Penny for your thoughts," he offered, following her gaze to where Lily was demonstrating how to approach unfamiliar dogs with respect and caution. "I was just thinking about Sarah," Martha replied, her voice soft with memory. "How proud she would be of that child, of both of you. Really." James nodded. The mention of his late wife no longer bringing the sharp pain it once had, but rather a warm, bittersweet ache. "She always said Lily would do something extraordinary someday. I just didn't expect it to happen at 6 years old." Martha chuckled, her weathered hands curling around the warm teacup. "Life rarely follows the schedule we lay out for it. That's what makes it such an interesting journey." As the tour group moved toward the lion habitat viewing area, Lily glanced back, catching her father and grandmother watching her. She waved enthusiastically, her face alight with the simple joy of sharing something she loved with others. Max looked back too, his intelligent eyes finding James and Martha with easy recognition, his tail wagging in contentment. In the lion habitat beyond, Nala had appeared at the viewing window, her cubs, now nearly full-grown, lounging in the afternoon sun behind her. The notch-eared lioness watched with serene attention as Lily and Max approached with their group of visitors. "You know," Martha observed, "in all my 73 years, I've seen a lot of wonders. But that child and that dog and those lions, they've taught me that there's always something new to discover, even when you think you've seen it all." James smiled, watching as his daughter began explaining to the fascinated visitors how lions communicate through body language and vocalizations. Her small voice carried clearly across the viewing area, confident and full of the particular wisdom that comes from extraordinary experience. "In a world that can sometimes seem filled with darkness," Martha continued, her eyes bright with unshed tears, "it does an old heart good to witness such a pure example of courage and connection. That python may have been a terrible danger, but it led to something beautiful, a reminder that love and kindness can cross the boundaries we humans are so fond of drawing." As if hearing her words, Max turned once more to look at Martha and James. The afternoon sun caught his fur, highlighting the silver beginning to thread through his muzzle badges of his advancing years and hard-won battles. Yet his eyes remained bright and alert, filled with the intelligence and devotion that had made him first a hero to strangers, then a savior to lions, and always, unfailingly, the best friend a little girl could wish for. In that moment, as sunset painted safari adventure in hues of gold and amber, the extraordinary story of a three-legged dog, a courageous child, and a pride of grateful lions seemed not just possible but somehow inevitable, a reminder that in the vast tapestry of life, the threads that connect us can be unexpected, unbreakable, and more beautiful than we ever imagined. Folks, remember when life was simpler, when a child's bond with their dog was sacred, when courage wasn't measured by likes on social media. Lily and Max's story reminds us of what we've always known in our hearts, but sometimes forget in this fast-paced world. Loyalty transcends words. Gratitude knows no species, and love leaves marks that time cannot erase. Like many of us who've weathered life's storms, Max didn't let his missing leg define him. He simply adjusted his gait and kept moving forward. Martha's wisdom echoes what our generation values most: practical faith, unwavering devotion, and the understanding that some things can't be explained by science, but must simply be witnessed with an open heart. When those lions stood vigil outside the clinic, they demonstrated what we've learned through decades of living, that kindness returns to us in unexpected ways, often years after we've forgotten the giving. In a world that sometimes seems to have lost its moral compass, this extraordinary tale of a child's courage, a dog's sacrifice, and a lion's memory reminds us that the values we cherished growing up still exist, still matter, and still have the power to change lives.